Today's video is about the separation of powers doctrine. My name is Mark Evans. I'm the principal at Whiteacre Legal, and I'm here today to talk to you about the separation of powers and why it's important and why it relates to you. All right, let's get straight to it. It relates to you, or it's important for you, because it prevents tyrants and autocrats and nasty people taking over your country and effectively having full control of you and everything that you care and enjoy about. All right, what is it? Well, in a democracy, when the smart people and the founding fathers, long time ago, blokes with wigs, started thinking about this stuff, they were trying to set up a system of government or a system of society where there were checks and balances, where one person, the president or the prime minister, wouldn't have all the power and they would be checked by another arm of government, if you like, who would have some power, but they wouldn't have all the power, and there'd be this balancing of power and separation of powers between the three entities. So let's talk about what they are. The first one is, in Australia, is the PM. It's the executive. So I'm going to call that the cabinet or the executive branch of government. And what's that? Well, they are politicians. They get elected and they're the senior politicians. So Minister for Education, Minister for Transport, Minister for this and that, and Minister for Health, the Prime Minister, they're all part of the executive. There's not many of them, there's 12 or so of them, and they get together and they make policy and they talk about what the government is trying to do. The other part is called the Parliament, and that's where everyone is. So that's the upper house and the lower house of Parliament, the Legislative Assembly and the Senate, other way around, Legislative Assembly, Senate. But that's the Parliament. And so the Cabinet or the Executive come up with some great ideas, some policy. Hey, let's do this thing, gun laws or whatever it is. But they can't just make those laws themselves. They need to send those laws down to the Parliament, into the Parliament, where they are too. They're in the Parliament too. But everybody has a discussion and a debate, and those laws need to be passed by the Parliament. So the Executive can't just make laws by themselves. They need to get it through the Parliament. And sometimes the Executive has the power in the Parliament. Sometimes they have a majority in the Parliament and they can just pass laws through. Sometimes they don't. Well, the third one, talking about old guys with wigs, it's the judges, it's the judiciary. And we'll talk about the High Court. So in Australia, it's the judges and it's the High Court. So let's use an example. If the Cabinet or the Executive, if they want to bring in a law that says that you can't criticise the government anymore, you can't write anything on social media, you can't get in the news and criticise the government. And that's the Executive, that's at the top, and it goes down to the Parliament, and the Parliament says, yeah, that's a great idea, let's pass that law. But I'm just a normal citizen and I don't like that law, and a whole bunch of other citizens, we don't like that law. Well, we can go off to the High Court and we can bring a case in the High Court that says, hey, that law that the PM and his mates, the Executive, put through the Parliament and they passed, that's invalid because that limits our free speech and that's against our Constitution. And the High Court will look at it and think about it carefully, and they have the power to say, no, that law is invalid, we'll strike it off the books, it's gone. So you can see there's this balancing of the High Court against the lawmakers. And the same is true. So where does the High Court come from? Where do those people come from? Well, they're put in there by members of the Parliament. And so the checks and balances are there to make sure that one part of the government and the judiciary don't have too much power. Now, why is that important? Well, it stops one person taking over the whole government and making your country terrible. I can hear you yawning, I can hear you saying, who cares, it doesn't apply to me, whatever. Yeah, probably. But these things don't all happen overnight. They're gradual little changes that take away until all of a sudden you wake up and all of your rights as a citizen are gone. Let's take one example. Let's say that the President or the Prime Minister says, you know what, I'm going to lose this election coming up. I don't think that people should have a right to vote, so I'm just going to take away everyone's right to vote. And we'll pass a law that says that anyone who doesn't have more than $1 billion can't vote. And so the Parliament says, yeah, that's great, and he has control over, she has control over the Parliament, and they pass that law, and the judges uphold that law, and all of a sudden you, an ordinary citizen, can no longer boot them out. And take another example. Let's say the President or the Prime Minister says, you know what, I really want to go to war with Russia or China. I really want to have a crack. And they pass that law through. And they also pass a law that says all citizens under the age of 25 must join the army tomorrow. And that includes you. All of a sudden, you find that you can't do the things that you want to do anymore. You get hauled out of your house off to a barracks somewhere and chucked in a uniform, and you find yourself on an aeroplane flying somewhere to fight in a pretty cold country. That sucks. And that's why the really smart founding fathers and the people that set up our systems set up these checks and balances that are called the separation of powers doctrine, and that's why they're important to you. Thanks for watching.